Hi, my name is Victoria Romero, and I'm going to be presenting to you what a youth correctional counselor is and what it is exactly that they do, some tasks that they do, how much they usually win, and just the path overall on how to become a youth correctional counselor, otherwise known as a YCC. So I'll be referencing to a YCC throughout the whole thing. So what is it that they do? So what they do is that they provide a case file of those convicted of misdemeanors or felonies, obviously those under 18 because it is a youth correctional officer. So they do provide counseling services for the offender and the parents because they could be having some family issues in the house or anything like that. YCCs often act as a liaison, so they network between community programs, social workers, other caseworkers that there may be, court officials, anything that's related to their case, they will work with and cooperate. So what they usually do is that they rehabilitate young offenders. What they do is that they're employed by state or national governments, and what they do is that they help juvenile law offenders become productive citizens. And they work with them individually, it could be in groups, and they're responsible for their rehabilitation and transition back into a normal, routine life. And then depending on the situation, they might interact with offenders on a daily or weekly basis. Um, Anywhere they've mentioned predetermined place, and it's a very everyday activity. And yeah, we'll see that later on in the schedules. You see what I'm referring to. So what's their common task and duty? So they supervise the offenders. What they do is that they monitor and evaluate the individual youth, and they make and retain their records. So what does that mean? They build a case file that will be presented to a parole officer or any other court officials, and they're constantly using tests and activities um, depending on the offense that they did. Um, so then they set up activities based on how it is that they're going to be able to rehabilitate them. So they might send them into a cooking class in a youth community program or a dance class or whatever it may be, something that might interest them and kind of like get in touch with real life and something that is productive to them, something that will encourage discipline. And last but not least, they'll evaluate an apt destination for them, meaning if the offender has drug substance abuse, they will probably most likely send them to um, a rehabilitation institution. If they have mental issues, they will send them to a psychiatry, stuff like that. So we're going to talk about later about what it is exactly that a YCC needs to have and what they need to have in order to make those decisions. So some common locations where they're hired at is at juvenile delinquencies or the community programs, and they're also often hired by state and local government. And now we're going to talk about the right quality. So this is kind of what I was looking for and when they make their decision on where to send the offenders. So YCCs, they need to have right disposition and temperament because offenders can have multiple issues and just behavioral problems. So they need to be open minded, very patient, and very high stress tolerant because there could be anything that happens, and the YCC needs to remain calm. And most important, they need to be shown as compassionate. They need to be adaptable because, like I said, stuff happens all the time, especially with their offenders. And they need to have high integrity because all of this they need to work with the court, and that's very very sensitive material that they need to be very ethical with. So some beneficial skills that help you become as a YCC is to set boundaries because you need to be able to have a normal conversation with the offender, but as well you need to make sure that you're setting a boundary, a professional boundary, and that way you're respected, and they also know that yes, you're not just a friend, but you're also somebody who's there to help them officially, professionally. I also need to be empathetic because these offenders will need somebody to look over them, and sometimes their parents aren't there. They might have some familial issues in the house. You need to have social perceptiveness. You need to know what's going on around in your environment and when to say some things, when to not say some things. and stuff like that. So you need to show compassion, because these offenders, all they're really looking for is somebody who will take care of them. And honestly, we'll talk about that later, but YCCs don't usually make that much money. So the fact that you're going into the field, it just shows that you're passionate enough to help these youth get through a hard patch in their life. And last but not least, you need to have good judgment, because like I said, the YCCs determine where these juvenile offenders go. So they need to have a good judgment on who the person is, what they're capable of, what they're not capable of, and their kind of like morality and ethics to see where they should be placed for them to become normal citizens and productive citizens, most importantly, in our society. So now some technical requirements to become a YCC. You do need to have a bachelor, no, just kidding. You don't need to have a bachelor's degree, although it is preferred. However, you could go into the field with just experience, and I'll talk that a little bit later. You do need to pass exams according to the state. So, like for example, in California, there's like a written exam that you need to pass, and it tests the applicant's skill in reading, writing, presented like within the context of a job. So they'll give you like a scenario, and you need to be able to answer what you would do. And they also undergo psychological testing. So they test for emotional maturity and physical testing as well. So this is all just to make sure that the YCC is capable of doing their job, and to not remain attached to their clients, because ultimately, yes, it is somebody that you need to care for, but at the same time, it's a very hard job that can take a toll on you if you are too invested into it. So other requirements is, you usually in most states you need to be at least 21 years old, because mind you, these offenders are 18 and now. So that's the age needs to be there. They also undergo drug testing, and sometimes they need to have a valid driver's license if they work in a community program, because there will be commercial vehicles driven and stuff like that to transport the kids. So the path to becoming a YCC. So we know that you need to gain the experience or knowledge. You apply to the job, you get an interview, you pass the background check, you pass the drug test, you get hired, and then you receive training. So usually training is on the job, you're on the job making it, and there is your supervisor obviously monitoring and evaluating you, because that's very sensitive material that you're not that you're messing with, but that you're dealing with. It's a youth's life on the line, and it's very sensitive. So what they usually do is a 16-week an apprenticeship program, and that'll be either 2 years. I think it's in California, if I'm not wrong. And another form of training is to specialize in a certain area. So you might want to specialize in substance abuse counseling, or any other types of counseling that you can have kind of on the side, but also to gain experience as well. So what does a typical schedule look like? YCCs don't really have a stable schedule. They have very regular hours. Their shifts or their time will be throughout the entire day. So they could either work in the morning, in the afternoon, or in the night. Most of the time it is flexible, and other times, well, like I said, it's not stable. It's not something that's very concrete, and it's not something that's very constant. They have rotating or swing shifts, which is basically means that your schedule changes every week. So it's not very dependable. It's not very consecutive and stable. So the job outlook, according to the BLS, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, is that there will be a growth of 6% through 2026. And the benefits of the job include health, dental coverage, and you get your sick and vacation pay. As well as all those, you also get educational opportunities. So you're encouraged to go and seek out in your field more. You're encouraged to research. You're encouraged to learn more and gain more experience and knowledge. So the salary is very touchy subject because most of the people, I think we can all agree, go into this field thinking that they want to help the people, and it's a very passionate job, most of all. I have a friend who she's a counselor, a court counselor, if I'm not mistaken, and she told me that when she was studying, um, the first day of class there was a lot of people, and then once they touched salary and that the students started noticing it wouldn't pay as well, people dropped like this. There was nobody left. She told me I think there was only two of the students left at the end of the graduation in that field. So it is very tough, which is why I said that usually most of these workers, they don't really care about the pay. It's more of a compassionate and altruistic way of viewing. But usually the average annual wage for the YCCs is $54,290 yearly as of 2019. So if you do plan on following some criminal justice degrees, the best universities or best colleges is UPenn, the University of California, Irvine, and the John Jay College of Criminal Justice. Obviously, you can study it anywhere else, and you can not only get a criminal justice degree, but you can get some form of social work or a counseling degree as well. You don't need to get a criminal justice degree to pursue the YCC career. And um, what else was I gonna say? Obviously, you don't have to go to these colleges. Everybody's like their own. Everybody goes to their own thing and they do their own thing. But yeah, those are just some colleges that are known for their criminal justice programs. So ways to stand out in the field. Everything in counseling, bueno, at least in this type of counseling, like social work, for example, uh, experience in the field is very, very valuable. So ways to stand out, internship and volunteer work. Gaining experience from the environment, from being out in the field instead of just being in an office, like doing paperwork and all of that. That is more important. Why? Because the offenders come from different backgrounds. They come from different state of minds. They come from different households. And that's another thing that YTCs need to have. They need to be aware of the different cultures that surround them that could have the possibility of coming to them, because they need to understand that not all cultures have the same ideologies, have the same beliefs, and that some things might apply to one culture, but other things may not. So they need to be very careful of that. And yeah, so internship and volunteer work is very, very important because you kind of gain some insight on the career itself, and practice, obviously, practice makes perfect. And so this is a summary. So we went over some of their responsibilities, tasks, duties, some of their qualifications, and the route to their career. And these are my references. I hope you enjoyed this PowerPoint presentation. Thank you for listening.